right at the top, you can walk around on this plateau, this surface that's been eroded, supposedly laid down 270 million years ago. Do you not think 270 million years is going to accumulate some dirt? You think there's not going to be some erosion going on? And yet, all erosion and accumulation is completely gone without a trace and without an explanation. It's just gone. So you can start to see where Derek Ager is coming from when he says that there are huge gaps. There are huge gaps indeed. Let's take a look at that 20 million year gap I mentioned. I also mentioned the research I carried out in my bedroom, where I have roughly 1 millimeter of dust accumulating per year. Let's assume that we're going to accumulate 1/100th of an inch every year of dirt accumulating on the land. Not a lot of dirt, is it? So this is easy math. You can do this at home. I know you guys hate math. I'm sorry. It's easy math, okay? Real easy. We're going to take 20 million years, multiply it by 0.01 inches. You get 200,000 inches over 20 million years. Or 16,666 feet, or 3.15 miles thick of dirt. Where did it go? Is it too much to ask for a simple assumption that only 1/100th of an inch accumulated every year average? And if it all got eroded away, wouldn't there not be evidence of that? Yet it is completely absent. It is gone. Anybody want to do the math for 270 million years? You can do the math at home. It's something you can do at home. So you can start to see these arrows each point at major gaps in the geologic record. To be specific, 92% of geologic time is missing from surely the finest example of geological history on planet Earth. Where did it go? You see, the uniformitarian assumptions are only used when it's in their favor and when it's used for convenience, when it bolsters their case. Again, playing on the numbers, let's assume 550 million years of accumulated time. Okay, that's pretty much all of the geologic record. There's still more to it. Some of that is up into the billions of years, but let's go with 550 million years. Again, let's go with metric, because I'm metric and it's way easier math. Let's assume that 1 millimeter of sediments accumulated every year, roughly the same amount that accumulates in my bedroom, okay, in 1 year. We will get, after 550 million years, 550 kilometers thick of dirt. This is why, 342 miles thick, this is why when they say that the geologic column does not exist anywhere on planet Earth, this is why. The geologic column does exist in one place on planet Earth. Does anybody know where it is? And I already showed you it wasn't the Grand Canyon. Anybody have a guess? Textbooks. It's the only place the geologic column exists anywhere on planet Earth. And I challenge you to find it. John Woodmorapee did a rebuttal to people like Glenn Morton, who did claim that there was the entire geologic column in various places around the planet. And John Woodmorapee basically laid waste to that silly argument. It does not exist anywhere on planet Earth. The evidence for deep time is gone, and there are consequences when you try and invoke deep time. Now, I think that's, oh yes, okay, the flattened fossils. I forgot about those. I mentioned this briefly the other day, and I'm going to repeat it again for the sake of being detailed and for the sake of those who weren't here the other day. Again, I passed around this fossil, and this is only one of many examples. Okay, this is fossil fish from the Green River Formation, and the fossils, as I pointed out, they're now flat, really flat. And again, the main point here is the flesh still had to be on the fish at the time it was flattened. Now, we talked about accumulated time, but one thing we can say is a whole pile of dirt got accumulated on this fish. Everyone agrees that what flattened the fish was the dirt that was piled on top of it. But is that fish going to stick around for hundreds of millions of years while hundreds to thousands of feet of dirt gets piled on top of it? No way. Ain't going to happen. And again, with these fossil fish, Same thing. And some of these formations are huge. They cover multiple states. So I'll pass around this fossil for those who didn't get to see it. How many people were not here for the first night, the children's night? Yeah, quite a few. Okay. So I'll pass these around so you can get a good look at them. We'll try and work these way back if we can. And this one, by the way, is just slightly fractured, so just be gentle with it. And I'll pass that one around too. I want these back, by the way. And I think that's it for that. That is. Now, the other thing that I've encountered recently, which I mentioned briefly on Friday, many people have tried to argue that dinosaur egg nests are a refutation of a global flood. All creationists, I think, would agree that the dinosaur eggs we find and the dinosaur egg nests that we find are laid down in flood layers that were presumably made by Noah's global flood. But they argue, how on earth can a dinosaur lay a nice, neat nest on the bottom of an ocean in the middle of a raging global flood? As we discussed yesterday, that is a very simplistic and false view. The water didn't encroach over the land overnight. It didn't cover the highest mountain overnight. It was months. And if you're a dinosaur and you're carrying around eggs for weeks or months at a time, when you gotta go, you gotta go. Sooner or later, you're going to have to do one of two things. You either have to ditch the eggs or put them into a nest. Instinct would make the dinosaur want to lay a nest, but the dinosaur may not have the chance to. And so during low tides, as the waters were coming up and going back down, they would lay down a new layer of sedimentary dirt. And so during low tide, the dinosaurs would apparently go out and lay nests, just as a last-ditch thing. Most of the time, we do not find nests. What we find is clusters of eggs. For example, this is a hadrosaur egg, an actual fossil dinosaur egg. And my buddy Vance Nelson and I, have, between the two of us, probably seen dozens of hadrosaur egg clutches. The thing is, this is the only one we've ever seen that was laid in a circle for either of us. I'm going to come back to that in a second. What I first want to show you is what would be called a textbook example of a dinosaur egg nest. Now, this is from an oviraptor. Apparently, oviraptors could lay 2 eggs at a time. You'll notice the eggs are laid in pairs. Apparently, what the dinosaur did was it would stand in the middle, lay 2 eggs, rotate, lay another 2 eggs, rotate, lay another 2 eggs, and lay them in a circle. It would then sometimes lay a second layer on top of that, sometimes a third layer on top of that. Now, originally, oviraptor got its name because it was found in association with dinosaur eggs, and they assumed it was stealing the eggs for food. So it got the name oviraptor. Ova for egg, raptor for stealer, the egg stealer. Later on, however, they found the exact same egg with an embryo in it, and that embryo turned out to be oviraptor. Apparently it wasn't stealing eggs. It was apparently trying to defend the nest from whatever catastrophe was covering it up. Now, what's really interesting, there has now been several oviraptors found that were buried alive sitting on the nest like a chicken and brooding it. That's not evidence of long and slow geologic processes. That is not a refutation of a global flood. If anything, that is confirmation of it. How on earth are you going to bury a dinosaur alive sitting on its nest? Simple, a flood. A global flood, to be specific. We've now found numerous of those. Now, interestingly, I mentioned that the eggs have been found with the embryos inside. That is a major key. Though we find lots and lots of dinosaur eggs, they almost never have embryos inside them. That tells you right off the bat there was no time for incubation. Once again, what is assumed to be evidence of long periods of time actually refutes the long periods of time. The few embryos that we have found can be explained because it is possible for reptiles to carry eggs that are already fertilized, and the embryos can develop while they're being carried by the mother. And it's only later on the eggs are laid and the babies can hatch. So the eggs we see were probably just ditched to get rid of the extra load and to get rid of the extra eggs. Because usually when we find eggs, they're just in a pile, just in the middle of nowhere. Now in this case, this hadrosaur egg nest was, as I mentioned, it's the only one Vance and I have ever seen that was actually laid in a circle. And I hadn't clued in until Vance mentioned it, but he's quite correct. They're rare to virtually non-existent to see hadrosaur egg nests in a circle like this. But again, this is assumed to have taken place in a nice, calm desert or something like that. But the evidence suggests otherwise. Now, this all comes out of an excellent Creation Research Society quarterly article. The article is online. It's called Dinosaur Nests Reinterpreted. You can check out the article online yourself. When this nest was discovered, they actually discovered it by removing a layer of rock. The layer of rock actually transected this egg. It was basically a polystrate egg. It cut vertically through multiple layers. Some of these other eggs were also cut vertically through the rock, and if you look at the original photographs, it appeared the eggs actually ascended as they were being laid. In other words, the dinosaur was laying them in a circle, but the mud they were laying them in was rising. And it's not the only example we have of that. The one model I'm missing here, which I didn't get a chance to finish making, was of 3 titanosaur eggs. Now, titanosaur eggs are about the size and shape of a basketball. They were probably 50 pounds or more when they were laid. I mean, they're just huge. So it's very hard to model. I didn't get it modeled before I left. The first one was laid, and then the second two, by the time the second two were laid, the mud had already risen up a little past the halfway mark on the first egg. Again, further evidence that these eggs were laid in less than pristine conditions. They were apparently just being ditched in rising floodwaters and rising mud. And again, in other cases, such as this oviraptor egg nest from Montana, again, laid 2 at a time, apparently this oviraptor laid its eggs on the run. What was it running from? Perhaps Noah's flood? Perhaps it was getting off the beachhead during low tide, high tide's coming in, it's time to high tide it out of there? Perhaps. So these eggs were apparently laid, and this is the way they were found, they were apparently laid in a run. Now there's a dinosaur track site, if you ever get the chance to go to Dinosaur National Monument, which I talked about last night. In a different part of the park, they have a dinosaur track site called the Red Fleet Track Site. You can go and visit this site, it's open to the public. I documented hundreds of dinosaur tracks. Almost every single one of them all went due northwest. It was multiple layers, 6 different levels, 6 different layers of rock, all had dinosaur tracks on them, all going in the same direction. Now, they interpreted this as herding behavior and migratory behavior. Sure, that's a possible explanation. Or another possible explanation is they were all running from the same thing. Perhaps Noah's flood. Again, it is all evidence of catastrophe. Even dinosaur tracks speak of the catastrophe, the impending doom that overtook the earth. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to move along to the Paluxy tracks. I will cover these again in more detail later on. But I wanted to cover these real quick because the question arises, again, if you recall yesterday, according to evolution, dinosaurs were supposed to have become extinct 60 million years before humans ever evolved. So if we find evidence of dinosaurs and humans together, we have not only demolished the evolutionary model, we have verified the biblical account which says dinosaurs and humans were created on the same day. And so what I have here is a dinosaur track. I'm going to switch sides for a second here. It looks like a giant fossil chicken track. There it is there. And I'm wondering if I can get a young lady from the audience to volunteer for a dangerous mission who doesn't mind showing off her left foot for us and taking her shoe off. Any volunteers? Oh, am I going to have to pick somebody? Oh, come on. Sure, okay, come on up, all right. I'm going to switch sides again. If you want to get on this side, would you mind taking off your left shoe and placing your heel right there and your toes right there, because inside that track is what sure looks like a fossil human footprint. That's actually a pretty good fit. Move it forward just a little. It's a very good fit. Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, give her a hand for this dangerous mission she volunteered for. This is a fossil dinosaur track with what sure appears to be a human footprint in it. The reason I asked for a girl is because you ladies have narrower heels than men do. We know that that's a woman's track. That's how we know. And it was part of a trail. Now, it was in very friable rock, so the tracks weren't all that clear, but in this case, it was part of a trail, and one of the footprints happened to step inside of a dinosaur track. The conclusions are obvious. This is not some track that was made millions of years after the dinosaur track. First of all, there's hundreds of feet of layers piled on top of it. We've removed some of those layers to get to this track. Now, some of the other tracks we have from the Paluxy may be vague at first glance, but again, it is the sequence that's key here. Now, hopefully, I don't think I'm going to be able to get the shading right. Now, if you saw a trail of these tracks in a right-left sequence, consistent stride, consistent length, walking down a beach, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking, oh, you know what? Surely this is a trail from where a dolphin beached itself, it was sick, and waddled its way across the beach. Isn't that what you would conclude? It's ridiculous, isn't it? Believe it or not, that is what one scientist suggested to explain away these tracks among dinosaur tracks. It has clearly got the human form. It's even somewhat got toe impressions. Although they're not very distinct, the impression is still there. These are fossil human footprints among dinosaur tracks. They should not be there. This is evidence that people and dinosaurs lived together. Again, it's not just people, but also other animals that cause a problem for the evolutionary model. Cats were not supposed to have evolved until 6 million years ago. So dinosaurs were supposed to have become extinct 54 million years before people ever evolved. That's a huge time gap. Yet, among the dinosaur tracks in the Paluxy, we find fossil cat tracks. And this was from a nice kitty that stood about 6 feet tall at the shoulders. You could try and take him for a walk, but I think it would be the other way around. Nice kitty. Again, completely demolishes the concept of evolution and verifies the Bible, which says that cats and dinosaurs were created on the same day. They were both land animals. Now, some of the tracks, again, everything in the past appeared to be bigger. People were apparently no exception. This is a cast of the Burdick track. Very big footprint. Believe it or not, this is not out of line, or out of order, I should say. Well, it's out of order geologically speaking, but believe it or not, this is the same size of foot as Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal's got some pretty big feet. Now, some might say he's not human, but technically, yes, he is still very human, okay? But again, evidence that dinosaurs and people lived together, apparently bigger people, apparently. I'm going to show you later on, you can notice that the footprint has been cut several times. I'm going to show you photographs of those cuts later on. The reason they did that is to verify that it was a genuine track and not a carving. Now, most of the tracks I show you here were actually dug up in front of numerous people underneath undisturbed limestone. So obviously they're not a carving, unless someone somehow got in underneath the layer and did it without anybody knowing. Highly unlikely. But again, this comes from Cross Branch. Now, I personally went to Cross Branch, and while I don't mind taking the word of researchers such as Carl Baugh and Don Patton, I just prefer to research things myself and to verify them myself. So I went to Cross Branch. I have had the privilege to get to study the original Burdick track. And when I went to Cross Branch, I instantly recognized the rock. It was exact same rock, good old-fashioned Austin chalk. Don Patton examined the rock context within the track and matched it to one exact spot within Cross Branch. And I agree with them. I'll add my voice to that. I do believe this is where the Burdick track came from as well. But Cross Branch is in Cretaceous or dinosaur rock. Dinosaurs and humans apparently lived together. Completely demolishes the concept of evolution. Now, this track is my pride and joy. Again, This is a fossil footprint of a dinosaur track with a human track in it. You can see the giant chicken track. And then within it is what sure appears to be a fossil human footprint. So once again, there's the giant chicken track. I have painted this false color for the sake of cameras and large audiences, strictly so you can see it. There are only 2 copies of the cast of this track in the world. One is on display in Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas, and the other is right here for your perusal. So do be sure to take a real good close look at it later on, because while I've painted it false color, you can look for yourself. The impression of the human footprint inside the dinosaur track is very clear, and it's all there, complete with all 5 toes. That is a genuine fossil human footprint inside a fossil dinosaur track. Dinosaurs and people lived together. This is proof that those scriptures are true and correct, and disproof of the theory of evolution. And if it was just these, I might be a little more skeptical. However, the Paluxy River is not the only place we find fossil human footprints. This one comes from the Robledos Mountains in New Mexico. And again, while I've painted it false color, you can check it out for yourself. This is a cast of that footprint. All 5 toes are there in impression. The ball, the arch, the heel. And incidentally, humans are the only creature that make footprints like this. Has anybody ever seen the footprints of an ape? I'm curious. Or seen the feet of an ape? You have? What do they have? Fingers. They basically have 4 hands. They don't have any feet, do they? They basically have 4 hands. Even apes do not have footprints like this. Humans are unique in that regard. Now here's the thing. This rock is from supposedly before the age of the dinosaurs. This is from Permian rock, not Cretaceous. This is from sometime way before the time of the dinosaurs. Again, refuting evolution, but backing up what the scriptural account says. There's a table out front here. I forgot to mention it the other night. I'm a member of the Creation Research Society. The reason I want to emphasize it is because the CRS does incredible amounts of very, very important research, but they basically don't have much of an outreach program to the lay people. So nobody knows about them, nobody knows about the research they do, but much of what I share with you over the past several days and the days to come comes straight from Creation Research Society. And so I'm just basically pointing out to them, pointing them out to people, calling their attention to them. If you can ship some ship some funds to them to help pay for research. Research, unfortunately, costs a pile of money, but they really do need funding and support. But here's what they can do for you as well. They have a newsletter sign up out there, and that's for a print newsletter. It's totally free. Just sign up with a mailing address, and they'll ship you the newsletter for free. And there's also a bunch of freebies out there. Creation Matters is a magazine that we have put out, for instance. There's also a newsletter, and there's a bunch of free ones out there. Feel free to take one. Please take one of each. They're also the publishers of CRSQ, which you'll hear me talk about a lot. CRSQ is Creation Research Society Quarterly. It is one of the few peer-reviewed creationist journals out there, and it is the oldest by a long shot. The society was started, I think it was in the 60s is when the society was started. Okay, what we've been talking about in the classes during the day has been the global flood. Now, one argument, I don't like using the word stupid, but I'm going to. One stupid argument I've heard, repeated over and over and over again, is that there's not enough water on Earth to flood the whole Earth. Well, really, let's examine this for a second. Here's a picture of Mars taken from one of the rovers. I think this one was Prospect. And as you can see, Mars is very, very dry. It is a desert. And here's the other one, panorama from the other rover. It is a desert. It is very dry. Lots of wind, lots of sand, no water. However, when you take a look at the planet, there's lots of water erosion. It's all over the place. Canyons, dendritic patterns, all kinds of stuff. And everyone agrees these were made by water. Lots of water. Now, Here's a major one on the red planet, Valles Marineris. While it's probably a tectonic split, again, there's piles of water erosion emanating in all directions from it. Lots of water involved here. Lots of water. But when you stand back, it is a very dry desert planet. Now, let's switch to planet Earth. Planet Earth has lots of dendritic patterns formed by water. It has lots of canyons, some so big you can see them from space, such as the Grand Canyon. Huge canyons, but with one unique difference. It's got a lot of water. This is the watery planet. Now, please stand back and tell me one more time, because I like a good joke, that there's not enough water on planet Earth to flood the planet. It's a silly, silly argument. But I hear it over and over and over again, and I always make the comparison to the planet Mars, because we look at that, it's been flooded by water, the water's not there anymore, we have tons of water for a global flood. And we've been looking at the exhaustive evidence for a global flood in the classes the past couple of days here. Now, what I want to touch on tonight, and I hope I don't step on any toes, if I do, please bear with me. I do not mean this in condemnation of any way. I'm going to be blunt and matter of fact about the point, and I'm going to start off with the provocative question, can a Christian believe in evolution? And the short answer is, well, yes, of course. That doesn't have anything to do with your Christianity per se. However, it is inconsistent. I don't want to use the word hypocritical because that has different connotations, but it's borderline hypocritical to call yourself a Christian but believe in evolution. And I mean that with all due respect, because I know there are a number of Christians out there who have been fed the supposed overwhelming evidence for evolution and deep time, which does not fit into the Bible, but they figure, well, these scientists are right. If evolution is true, Christ and the apostles are either mistaken or liars. There's no getting around it. And if they're mistaken or lying about the past, why on earth should we trust them for the gospel message?